Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's Common Ground. I'm Malva Kajali, Special Projects Associate here at the Rail, and today I have the pleasure of welcoming Marcia Minter and Daniel Minter, co-founders of the Indigo Arts Alliance, which we'll hear so much more about very shortly. They're joined by art historian and friend Jessamine Batario, and we're so lucky to have the poet Brandon Wint here with us today, who will be reading to close today's program. So really looking forward to that, Brandon. Finally, we've started out all of our events here with two important acknowledgements. The first is that here in New York, we're on Lenape-Hoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and the Shinnecock Indian Nation. The second is an acknowledgement that Black Lives Matter. And I think it's worth saying that the heart of both of these acknowledgements is a commitment to the liberation of the oppressed and solidarity for all those who struggle for freedom, in recognition that when it comes to liberation, our histories never unfold in isolation. In that spirit, I encourage you all to check out the chat for a living document of resources and actions we've been putting together behind the scenes here at the Brooklyn Rail. But we'll get right into it. Now it's my honor to welcome our wonderful guests of this afternoon. Marcia Minter is an arts advocate and community leader, deeply committed to social and cultural activism. She's joined by American artist Daniel Minter, whose work in painting, assemblage, and more wrestles with themes relevant to so many, themes of displacement, diaspora, spirituality in the African Atlantic world, and meditations on the meaning of home. Together, they are co-founders of the Indigo Arts Alliance, a nonprofit dedicated to the creative cultivation of artists of the African diaspora, and today they're joined by the formidable Jessamine Batario, an art historian specializing in the modern and contemporary periods. Jessamine holds a PhD in art history from UT Austin and lives in Waterville, Maine, where she is a curator of academic engagement at the Colby College Museum of Art. Without further ado, Jessamine, take it away.
Thank you so much, Malvika, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon for what I already know will be a terrific conversation with wonderful friends, Daniel and Marcia. I would also like to acknowledge that I'm zooming in to join you from Maine. That's the homeland of the Wabanaki, which includes the Abenaki, the Micmac, the Maliset, the Passamaquoddy, and the Penobscot. And I'm happy to be joining you once again. I love working on rail projects. Before we get into a conversation with Marcia and Daniel, to set kind of the tone, I would love if Malvika, you could play that video.
My name is Nugent E. Smith, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist. In my practice at this moment in time, I'm really thinking a lot about the colonialism, the effect of colonialism in the Black diaspora, and the many implications and complications brought on by our modern day contemporary issues. This work is taking form, it takes the form of performance, it takes the form of mixed media drawings, paintings, video, photography, sculpture, all of these different forms, all of these different mediums are like languages for me. And I think about when there are people who speak multiple languages, sometimes in conversation, in order to truly get to the core or to the essence of what they intend to say, they switch to another language. And that's very much the same for me in my creative practice. Indigo Arts Alliance has received a sneak peek into some of the music and stuff, and just wanted to talk about the digital space a little bit more, and thinking about community, thinking about building and maintaining and fostering meaningful relationships in a virtual space. And that was one of the things that I thought a lot about during the time of the residency with Indigo. And so as a result of that experience, one of the things that I've begun to do in collaboration with my brother is create what we call Club Bundle House. And so Bundle House is a series of work that I've been making since 2005. It's a term that I coined, which speaks to people literally having to bundle materials together to make a home. And metaphorically, it speaks to those having to rebuild their lives from things that remain. The way that I'm thinking about this work is that we as humans are bearing this weight. This is the reason why this new sculpture is taking this figurative form. So some of the lines from the music been making recently, thinking about it. Really, a lot of it is, you know, poetry for sure, and then how it all connects to,
I think that's
higher calling, how it connects to.
Thank you. Mugen really spoke to a lot of the things we're going to be talking about today, which is why we wanted to share that kind of right off the bat. Thinking about artists and relationship to the diaspora, the African diaspora, and colonialism and the effect on that. And also, I really appreciated how he talked about relationship building in community. That's really kind of a large theme of what we'll be talking about. And it's actually really in line with what I see as the ethos of the Rail as well, in terms of community building and relationships. And this is kind of how it started when Fong visited Maine a couple of years ago, when he was a Lunder Institute fellow. We spent a day in Portland and we stopped by Indigo, and he met Daniel and Marcia, and we had a terrific conversation, and right off the bat, it was great. And so we're all really happy to be joining now, 2 years later, a pandemic in between that. And so since then, actually, I've worked quite a bit with Daniel and Marcia. Daniel came to Colby for some academic engagements, visited some classes, and it was kind of momentous. I have this very distinct memory that Daniel was here on campus the day there was a lunch to honor him, with museum staff and students and faculty. And it was that very day that the announcement came out that everything needed to shut down. And so I can't believe that happened. We shared that together, Daniel. Yeah. Like we all received the email, like everybody needs to leave campus like in the next 2 days. And we were like, oh my gosh. So I feel like things, there was a halt to things, but I think now that things are opening back up, we're resuming the conversations, and this is so timely, and I'm so glad to be doing this with the two of you. And so really what I'm hoping to get today is for everyone to see the fantastic work that you're doing. And not only that, but to also get to know you as individual creative practitioners. Daniel's an artist. Marcia has an intriguing background as a creative director and also has her curatorial projects. So we'd love to share that as well. And also kind of some organic things have been happening between Indigo Arts Alliance and the Lunder Institute for American Art at Colby. For example, I think she's here now. Veronica Perez was an artist in residence at Indigo, and now she's with us in Waterville. Hi, Veronica. And so hopefully that's the start of a more fruitful connection and collaboration. And so with that, could you please share the images, Nick? This is a fantastic picture of Daniel and Marcia. And it really goes to show, that they built Indigo from the ground up, really quite literally. Indigo is a relatively young organization, but it's already made such a significant impact. And so I think to start with, Marcia, can you please just give the broad overview? What is Indigo Arts Alliance?
Sure. Thank you so much, Jessamine and the Brooklyn Rail and the Brooklyn Rail team and Fong for having us. We are thrilled to be in this conversation and have such fond memories of our time together with the initial visit. I can't believe it was only 2 years ago with Fong. It feels like it was like least 5 years ago. And Jessamine, same thing. I feel like at this point we're like sisters in the arts, and so yeah, it's really wonderful to be here. So yes, so Indigo is really the result of a couple of things. It's the result of a lifelong dream between Daniel and I. We've been married 28 years, and we've been, I can't believe I'm supposed to remember. I'm the one that's supposed to remember, I think. And then we've been together for 30. And we came together, you know, organically, actually through a martial arts class, but we connected through our love of the arts. And so early on, we developed this, this dream of starting a community of artists that were Black and Brown artists, were artists where we could be together working in serious practice in a space that really valued and honored who we are in our entirety, where our past, present, and futures are valued. And so that was the seed. And then over our many travels, we've lived in a number of places. We met in Atlanta, we lived in Seattle, we lived in New York, we lived in Chicago, we lived in Brazil, we came back again. And so all of those places, we always had deep and meaningful relationships with all kinds of artists. But it never failed that when we were with other Black and Brown and just BIPOC artists in general, that the conversation would end with, God, wouldn't it be great if we had a space? Well, you know, a place. Aren't you tired of being the only one when you go to these places and spaces? So that's a little bit of the backstory on the genesis. And of course, there's much more that we'll talk about in this conversation.
And so this picture is really, you know, before, I mean, it was the space that was there before that you made it kind of a home, actually. So if we could go to the next slide, you can see what it looks like now.
It was a parking lot, and that happened to be in one of the most vibrant neighborhoods in Portland, and the most diverse neighborhood in Portland, if not in the whole state of Maine. And we were fortunate enough to work with a developer who really has a deep love for the arts, and said, I got this one plot. It's, you know, let's do this thing. And so we dug it up, and here we are. That's our building.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful space. And this is a terrific photo from the outside. Nick, if you could go to the next one, we can see the inside of it. Yeah, here's one of the studios. Marcia, you were saying this was Sarah Kahn's studio, right? I think Sarah's here today. So hi, Sarah.
Sarah, here you are. Yes, so Sarah was telling a story about how she drove up from New York City in a car jam-packed, and within 2 hours, she turned an empty studio into a space that looked like she had been here for 2 years. And she came for, I think it was supposed to be a 2-month residency, and it was basically turned into almost a 4-month residency between, but it was super productive, and we are so grateful for her time with us. So this shows one of our studio spaces. You can go to the next. And then this just shows a very clean moment in our developing workshop area. This is a common space that artists use. We have a press, we have, you know, a bunch of different workspaces and tables, and this is where our artists kind of come together and just share and make outside of their studios. But really the entire 4,000 square feet that we have are used by artists when they're in residence, as well as by our community when we host public engagement events.
Let's talk about the residency program that y'all have. Actually, they're you know, 1 month, or sometimes they're longer, as you say. Can you talk more about the residencies?
You want to start?
Well, yeah. Hello, everyone. Our residency is really our core mission, because it's it's really important to us that artists are able to share their practice, their thoughts, their ideas with other artists. And it seems to us that there are so few opportunities for Black and Brown artists to actually do that in a space where they can have the opportunity to experiment, have the opportunity to do some things that they don't normally do, or do some things that they don't necessarily do well, to do some things that are not going to be successful and may never be shown to anyone, but they learn from each other just by experiencing these things. And so that's the primary that's the primary motivation behind us creating the artist residency model, and this model of it being open like this, where the artist that comes has access to all of the space that we have. And they are paired with a local artist that is here as to work in a mentor-mentee relationship, collaborator in some type of a way to, just to enhance that exchange. And all of these other things that we do grow out of that.
Right. It's really, the premise is really about being an incubator space. We talk about, we are focused on the front end of the creative process, not the production end, back end, or not the product, rather. Right. We are obviously focused on production, but more from ideas and concepts. We're more concerned about that than what happens or what's produced at the end.
So there's really no expectation of some, culminating project or anything like that.
No, only if an artist comes with that as their own personal intent. Otherwise, it's about ideas and concepts and relationship building. And because that's really at the heart of how we have made this happen, is through the many relationships that we've cultivated over our journeys and our places and spaces that we've lived, that have enabled us to survive as creatives in a field much dominated by non-BIPOC people. Or at least that's the narrative anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. And what I absolutely love about, there are lots of artists in residency programs and stuff, but what I love about what y'all are doing is that it's really like mentorship is kind of at the heart of it as well. Your artists are paired, so it's typically you're bringing in artists from all over, and then they're paired with an artist, say, who's based in Maine. And can you talk a little bit more about what those relationships are like, those mentor-mentee relationships? Are there, I know since you're on the kind of process end and beginning end, are there any expectations for these relationships?
Well, I'll just start off by saying that the Indigo was started as an international organization with a national focus with local concerns. And so we are based here, but we're thinking very globally. And so our mentor, what we call our mentor artist, for lack of a better word, are highly experienced professional artists across disciplines. We engage visual artists across disciplines, writers across different modes of modalities, and as well as performing arts, choreographers, composers, working out pieces. And they come as an individual in that kind of ideas, concept stage of a particular work. And we pair them. They come from anywhere in the world, in the diaspora, and we'll talk a little bit more about Indigo's definition of that. And we pair them with a local, Maine-based Black or Brown artist. And the reason for that, well, maybe Daniel, you're better to talk about the reason for that.
Oh, it's a little bit like I said before, is a lot of times an artist can think more deeply about the process or about their ideas, about what they're doing, when they are explaining it to someone, or when they are having in conversation with someone, where there is not there's not an end, a decided end to the conversation. And in that, and I'm saying, in a situation where they are not teaching, it is an opportunity for them to share and learn themselves. And that's what the mentor-mentee relationship does. Whereas the mentee is gaining something from the relationship, and the mentor is giving something, but it is not prescribed. So each situation is going to be a little bit different, because they are so individual based. It's not based on discipline. Whereas one artist may be a photographer, they may want to be paired with someone who is a writer. They may want to be paired with someone who is a sculptor. Mm-hmm. So as I'm sure you all know, the types of concepts and ideas that we talk about as artists, they are not restricted to the art form.
Right. And also we recognize that the notion of mentorship is intergenerational, mm-hmm. so that it's not an old person with a young person. It can be any variation on age. And it can also be a highly professional, experienced artist with another highly professional, experienced mm-hmm. artist, who really are just interested in being in space and time together. So actually, this may be a good moment mm-hmm. to share the video of Moon Mashar and Gwene, as an artist who is now an alum, who was in residence with us, because it's always good to hear from the voice of someone who's experienced the program.
My name is Mashar. I am a writer and a poet and an artist here at Indigo Arts. I found poetry as a protective piece, a mechanism that I developed from my trauma. I went through some childhood trauma that I did not know how to understand and find a relationship with. And so through poetry, I was able to take these really intense emotions that I was feeling as a child and be able to describe them in abstract ways where I was too afraid to say them in plain text. And so poetry kind of became my escape, kind of became my shield of how I was going to maintain telling my truth and speaking my story and telling the stories of others. But if I was too afraid to say it in a normal way, I found this new art form that would allow me to tell it through metaphors, through symbolism. The way that I first was able to see a display of Black power in a different way outside of politics or the conventional way that a person or a system or a structure is elevated. It was incredible for me to see this unique new wave of elevation that happens through art, through artistry, through paint, through sculpture, and to have a Black community or a Black representation be the forefront and the leadership of that movement became something very exciting to me. So even before I began my art residency here, I was able to find Marcia through the
Let's see if we can get the lag to stop. If not, we'll keep going.
It's coming off of it.
Oh, well.
Well, we got a snippet. I think Malvika, if you could also just share the link in the chat, people can watch the rest on their own. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but going back to what you said, Daniel, and also even relating it to what Moon was saying, just the sharing of ideas. Like I've said this before with the rail, but like, you don't really sometimes know what you're thinking until it comes out of your mouth. And even as you're talking, you may not even know what will come out of your mouth. And so it's great. It's really kind of like that experimental, how do you convey something like what Moon was saying, how do you do it in a different language? And that goes back to what Eugen was saying too, like the differences in language. And so, switching from one to another, you can think that way too about the different media. But here we have some more pairings. You want to talk about these pairings?
Yes, that's really appropriate, talking about sharing of a language and switching the language. These two artists are very accomplished, two very accomplished artists working together, but one of them works in a really loose and flowing way, and the other works with in an incredibly precise way, precise and controlled method. And they both gain so much from working with each other. One of them, and both of them have a very technical background. So they had the language to communicate, but their artworks look so different and came from such a different place. But they were able to communicate so smoothly because they both understood where they were coming from.
Yes, and then also Ineta Sanchez is from Salvador Bahia, Brazil, originally, currently living in Sao Paulo, and obviously, she speaks Portuguese, she speaks English, and then Ebenezer is originally from Ghana, and he has been living in Maine for quite some time. And in addition to what Daniel shared, they were in very different places. Ineta has shown in museums around the world, and has been living as a professional artist for most of her life, adult life. And Ebenezer is still in that hybrid place of one leg still in a full-time job, the other leg fully immersed in the art world with many successes. And so there was a lot of just beautiful personal conversations about how do you do it? How do you actually make that full leap and not be scared anymore? And so those are the kinds of things that happen in these pairings, is that it's mostly not technical. It's mostly about being really human and raw and open with each other, and moving through emotions and the complexities of life, particularly the life of being, a BIPOC, a Black, Brown, Indigenous person in this world and in this field. The next pairing, let's show Jordan Carey and Mita Mastani. Briefly, we won't talk a lot about each person, but they're just another example of a lovely pairing. Jordan had literally just graduated from Maine College of Art and with a degree in textile design. And Mita Mastani is an older, accomplished textile artist living in India. And she came and spent a month with us, and their relationship did feel like mother and son by the end of it. And they still, 2 years later, are working together on collaborations, literally. So those are just a couple of examples of what mentorship is and how it manifests, and the ways in which it is generative and is intended to be something that we hope carries on well beyond the artist time at Indigo.
And here's proof of one that worked out that way. I mean, I see it as it's so crucial and important, at least from my perspective as well. We're talking about how BIPOC people or BIPOC artists or creative practitioners, kind of navigating the larger field. And, sometimes you don't see yourself in these spaces. And so how do you even ask or find out, like, what do I do next? And so I loved hearing about, finding someone or having these conversations, not just to talk about your practice and explore ideas with each other, but also to be able to ask, like, how do I do this? How can I get there? And that's so important. So I love that.
I just want to just add a point of clarification about when we talk about diaspora. We are certainly talking about the African diaspora, obviously, but we're also talking about the transatlantic slave trade and all those places that were impacted by colonization, to include not only those displaced by that slave trade, but also the Indian Ocean slave trade.
Mhm.
So we are engaging with people from the Middle East, from, southeastern, south and eastern, Asia and the Pacific Rim.
Mhm.
All as we know, all of those places have been deeply impacted by colonization and all of the after effects of that, to which we all still experience to this day. And
Mhm.
so it's that shared history and those shared experiences that really connect us deeply and enable what is really unique about our residency that can't be replicated at another residency that has a different kind of makeup
Mhm.
to that end. It's so those, all the many other residencies that exist everywhere in the world are so vitally important for artists. But what is unique about ours in particular is that we are dedicated to cultivating a literal environment and an energy in this space where people walk in and feel like they can just breathe.
Mhm.
Yes, there's
Mhm.
so many places that around the world that whose artistic cultural practices and beliefs were devalued and and subjugated, and pieces of it, used to service, in a way, a larger, a different ideological outcome than they were intended for. Uh, I'm just basically saying that their, cultures were almost mined in a way. So that experience, to have your culture devalued and then seeing it uh, being commodified in a different way that does not benefit you or your people. That's an experience that we like to eliminate in this space. When you walk in that door, you know that the work that you create, the work that that you generate, is for you and your people.
Yeah, and also beyond the work, that your body,
Yes. Yes, your
is
body.
not a commodity here. You are not here to be the representation or the box checked, or as Sarah would say, the spice to someone's soup. It is, you just here, we get you.
Yeah. That's so refreshing. That's so refreshing. That's so refreshing. You're just yourself. You're an individual. You're a full human.
Yes.
You're there and you're with other people who are full humans, and you're just yeah. You feel like it's, you've come home in some way, some other home.
Yeah.
That's terrific. And to kind of go back to mentorship, I mean, that's such a big part of this, like the relationship building. I'm wondering, if you're willing to share, do you have mentors that you'd like to talk about? Who has kind of uplifted you, who's welcomed you, connected you, recognized you, and inspired you?
Well, I think we want to pay homage and all respect to our both of our personal mentor, friend, and inspiration and advisor to Indigo, when it was a germ of an idea. If you can show the next photo, as David Driscoll. We miss him very much. We were fortunate enough to be here with him over many summers. He would come in summer here from May until the end of October, having lived here and spent time here when he was a student at Skowhegan many years ago. And so he's just been a go-to person for me to really vet these ideas about navigating or trying to find my own personal place as a creative person, as a business person, as a Black woman in this field of the arts. And when I say the arts, in my instance, I'm talking about both my commercial experience and my experience on the larger world of the visual arts and the fine arts and all the other forms of the arts. And so he helped me break a confidence barrier, honestly, to realize that why not you? So Daniel, he had his own relationship with David that was quite special.
Yes, the relationship, I guess the mentor-mentee relationship that we had is a good example of learning without being taught, or teaching, without teaching. Just because any conversation that I had with David was always more than just that conversation. He would, and we talked about many things outside of art. Matter of fact, we did not talk about specifically art that much. Even when we were standing around talking about art, we may have been talking about something else, other situations or things about his past, or things or hopes for a future or whatever. But the conversation was a lot more valuable than the topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel fortunate to have been able to attend one talk by David Driscoll. I'm not sure if it may have been his last or maybe his second to last, but it was in the fall of 2019, I think it was. And yeah, so I think I arrived to Maine late, but I was able to have that. And I think that was maybe one of the first times we all met, actually, at that talk afterwards. So yes, thank you for sharing about David Driscoll. I think he's mentored so many, and he's a special figure. I'd like to pick up on something that you both kind of said. You're both alluding to kind of your own creative practices as individuals. You've both founded Indigo Arts Alliance, but you have individual creative practices yourself. So first, let's turn to Daniel, actually. So you're an artist, Daniel. Would you like to share some of your work and talk to us a bit about it?
Well, yeah, I'm a painter and sculptor. My one of the basic ways that I express myself is through a relief carving, and I feel like that's a African American Southern traditional way of working with materials, of working with found materials, and a way of expressing narratives and ideas. So I've been collaging these pieces to deepen that narrative.
We can move through some of them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And also I take those pieces and whereas the collaging of them, deepens the narrative, a lot of them I pull out of that and simplify, really simplify them and almost turn them into to demonstrations of ritual objects or demonstrations of ritual practice. They are not, they're not actively ritual objects, but they are demonstrations of that, or they are remnants of those practices, because so much of the culture in the South, where I'm from, I grew up in South Georgia, so many of the practices we have are remnants of African practices that we somehow managed to keep, managed to hide, managed to hold on to, managed to embed in other things. And so within a lot of my work, I embed those types of things.
Mm-hmm. We can go to the next slide, Daniel.
Yes, and this one is also related to the last piece. Another thing about my work is every piece is related to every other piece in some kind of way. And this one is more of a a concept of a person, of us giving of ourselves, always having to give of ourselves, and not necessarily getting getting what we've bargained for in return.
Mm-hmm.
And this piece also speaks to an idea that I've been thinking about and working with within a lot of this that also involves those practices. This one is from protective clothing, and the idea of protective clothing comes from the idea that we must have a psychic armor around us if we are to survive, and if we are to bear this constant weight that we have, this constant invisible weight that fortunately lately has been becoming more and more visible to everyone in the country. And this one of the symbols I use to denote that weight is this bulbous bottom of a ship that you see in the top of the piece. It's just a round piece. It's not very visible, but what that is the bottom of a boat. That is the bottom of a boat viewed from the bottom of the Atlantic. And it represents that weight that follows us around, that weight that we can't shed until we understand that it's there, until we understand and eliminate that weight from our lives.
This is, I mean, what you're saying, Daniel, it's really speaking to me. I've been myself just thinking about that concept recently, about weight and burden and what it feels to carry something like that. And I mean, I find that relates to even just the experience you're describing. As soon as you arrive at Indigo, you feel some of that weight removed, actually, because you've found your people in some way, you know, which is so great. Thank you for sharing that. And also
Jessamine, can we move to the next one?
Sure.
Yeah, there's
there's one more.
It would be great to talk about this one because it's combined so many things.
This one does. This one, you know, is from the series I called States of, you know, and it is a question, you know, is as what state are we in? And this one goes all the way back to the founding of this country. And the whole basis of this piece is currency, money, currency and exchange. And in this, you know, it demonstrates that our bodies are the currency. And in so many ways, our bodies, you know, it still is the currency, and treat it as a currency. And a currency cannot be, if you are the currency, you have no value to yourself because you cannot use the currency because you are the currency. And this piece just collages so many emphases of that over time.
This is a really powerful piece. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think one thing I forgot to do actually is to ask Malvika to share a link in the chat about that goes to that conversation between Daniel and David Driscoll. It's too long to be sharing here. It's like over 40 minutes. So we'd love to just put it as a resource for the audience in case any of you would like to check it out. It's a great talk.
Oh, yeah. And maybe the link also to Daniel's recent Joyce Award.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Congrats, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you.
And but let's turn to Marcia, actually. I mean, you talked about, you know, kind of your commercial experience as well, Marcia, and you've been a creative director in the past for so long. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and turn to your curatorial practice as well.
Sure, yes. So I've spent my entire career until Indigo working in advertising and marketing and Specifically, I would say the bulk of that was in fashion, working with various retailers as a creative director, ranging from Nordstrom and Macy's, and what brought us here was LL Bean. I spent quite a long time there as a vice president creative director. And in between that, I also worked for publications and magazines. I was a creative director at Essence Magazine, and also worked as a contractor for Microsoft and other and digital media. And so my career and projects and client base spans the gamut, really, across all those various places I named where we've lived. It's because, you know, I was moving to another job and working for another brand, and so that really has been a wonderful, you know, part of my creative development. It is exactly the career that I had dreamed of having when I was a child. Dan and I joke because young people will ask us, when did you know you wanted to do whatever? And we're like, oh, we kind of knew when we were like 5 or 6. My mom is like, what is an art director? I'm like, I don't know, but that's what I'm going to do. And so, yeah, but I also always held a love for the arts. My family has many artists in it. I have an incredibly talented niece in the Seattle area, Tarika Waters, who runs an incredible gallery space there and is a powerful artist in her own right. I have a brother who's a painter, and, you know, it's just all in the family. And so I've never, ever not been working and living and breathing all forms of the arts. I was a dancer at one point, you know, when I was in middle school and high school, seriously thinking that's what I was going to do. So yeah, and so curation comes naturally because the bulk of my experience was in photo art direction. And so I love photography from a curatorial standpoint. I love shooting myself, but what I really love is editing. Mm-hmm. What I really love is storytelling. What I really love is finding and sourcing talent. I was talking to another executive director friend of mine, Yael Reinhardt, who is the executive director at Surf Point Foundation this weekend. And we were like, don't you get tired of people asking you whether or not you have an artistic practice? And I said, yeah, but you know, I decided my artistic practice is cultivating artists. That is my practice. And that's what curators do. That's what creative directors do. That's what executive directors do. And I love that. I love connecting people, particularly artistic and creative people, around a shared idea. And so with that, maybe Malvika, we could just open up the link for this exhibition I curated. The first one, the Cove Street Arts. And we don't have to click through anything. If you could just push it up in the screen. This was a beautiful photography exhibition that I curated in 2019 at Cove Street Art Gallery. And it combined 2 artists, because I love pairing people and putting combinations of folks together. One artist whose work was based in Cuba, and another artist whose work was based in Southeast Asia. And I put them together in conversation in a beautiful exhibition. And then the next link, Malvika. Yes, this is a beautiful exhibition that just came down. This is the work of Shawn Alonso Harris, who is an accomplished photographer in his own right, and is based here in Maine. And he was an artist in residency here at Indigo Arts Alliance. And this is a work that he created during his residency in collaboration with Moon. When you watch the rest of that video, you'll hear her talk about this collaboration. But these are the kinds of pairings where, you know, when he said, you know what, I don't really want to have a mentee who's another photographer. I want to collaborate with someone. And I was like, oh, do I have the person for you? And so we kind of talked, and this is Shawn and Moon's vision of celebrating the beautiful community of Black immigrants that we have right here in Maine, right here in Portland, living right here in the same neighborhood where Indigo Arts Alliance is located. And then lastly, this last link quickly is just a brand new exhibition that in series of a whole, it's actually a whole wing, happens to be the Lunder, the Lunder family wing of the new Children's Museum and Theater of Maine. And Daniel and I both had the pleasure of serving as consultants on this wing in honor of the great illustrator, Ashley Bryan. And I specifically curated an art exhibition that celebrates the work of Black artists who illustrate children's books in that museum, as well as other aspects of the entire space. So those are just some recent projects in addition to the work that I do here at Indigo.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And so speaking of the work, returning to the work at Indigo, actually, so in addition to the residency program, you know, you all have other programs, like how you engage with the public engagement stuff, community engagement stuff. It's really rooted in that way. Can you talk about the kind of programs you have?
Yes, and maybe Daniel and I can share this. I mean, we always say that there's a reason why we have the word alliance at the end of our name, Indigo Arts Alliance, instead of Indigo Arts Residency only, is because we really wanted to be part of correcting the canon. We really wanted to be part of addressing the underrepresentation of Black and Brown artists nationally, internationally, locally. And we know from our own personal experience that the only way to do that is to be working in partnership and collaboration and to literally be building community. We go back to Dr. King's statement about creating and building a multiracial democracy, that none of us are free until all of us are free. And so we want to engage with other artists and other creatives and arts professionals and people in the broader community, no matter what sector they work in, who care about those same values. And so we partner with people who share those values in order to provide multiple stages for the artists and the people that engage with us, so that the learning is reciprocal. It's not because our artists need help and need this thing. It is because the global community needs us, needs to recognize our contributions, our thought leadership. That's why, you know, we're focused on the front end, more important than the product at the end. That matters, but we want them to be able to see and experience the thought leadership of BIPOC, particularly Black, Brown, and Indigenous creatives. And so that's why with each residency and pairing, we require them to give at least 1 or 2 public engagement conversations, talks, workshops, something that brings them into community with our general public. Of course, we started with that locally, but one of the flip side of COVID is that we spun on a dime because we were so new, and we started doing everything like everyone else did, but we literally spun on a dime. I mean, you remember when Daniel was up there. We had our last event here, and we were in the middle of residents and all kinds of things. And we were like, oh no, this is not gonna stop. No, we are not sitting quiet for God knows how long. And so the next weekend, that very same weekend, we pulled Shawn and Moon online, and we did everything virtually until now. We're still doing things virtually because we just actually find that the audience has grown so much. But Daniel, can you?
No, I was just going to say that we believe that art has a function, that art does something for people, and if the work is hidden away it is not working. It's not doing it. It's not doing anything for anyone. And so that community engagement, that aspect of the work is really important to us, because so much of the work that we do, that artists of color do, is a direct is meant to directly infuse energy into the community. It's or it is a direct response to our community, to our environment. And so we want that work to function, to get out there and do its and work its purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of partnerships, alliances, being in the community and all that work, is there a program that's coming up that you'd like to share or talk about?
So we're super excited. It's already underway, actually. We have been collaborating with the Portland Museum of Art on the retrospective of David Driscoll that is actually traveling the country. It started at the High Museum in Atlanta, just recently came here home to Portland, to the Portland Museum, and will continue to travel. I think next it goes to the Phillips. Oh, Rodney's here. Speak of the devil, admit him. That's I'm hoping that is David's nephew, Rodney. Anyway, yes, we are programming partners for the exhibition. We have worked with the curators and the team there on the educational materials. And including their iconography guides, other guides and information about David's work and about things that were of concerns for him, things that are important to know about this community in particular here in Maine, and then also contributing just our insight with some of the actual pieces in the exhibition. We are also convening a symposium, a panel on July 28th. Please sign up. I think the link will be put in the chat. And that's going to be incredible because David loved the land. And as we all know, he also loved his culture, his Southern upbringing, his African-American lineage, his Africanness. And so our symposium is going to be about Black people and our relationship to the land. And it's going to come at that from several different angles with scholars, artists, farmers, environmental activists, all Black, who are going to talk about that from past, present, and future standpoints. And then Daniel will be teaching a collage workshop in August. I can't remember the exact date for that. I think it's the 23rd. And then in September, before the exhibition closes, we are presenting an outdoor screening of the film, the wonderful film, In the Absence of Light. And we will be presenting a talk back with some of the people in the film, paired with some of our Indigo Arts Alliance past alumni heirs in conversation. That will happen probably about a week or so after the in-person screening. So that will be available for folks, no matter where you live in the world, to see and enjoy.
That sounds like a fantastic lineup. That's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to the one on July 28th. I will try my best to make it. I'll sign up and go. Really, now I'm committing myself. I'd love to go.
Well, one of your colleagues will be our moderator, Cheryl Thompson-Giltz. So.
Cheryl, I love Cheryl. Yeah. Okay. Terrific. So I think with that, shall we turn to Q&A from the audience? Thank you both so much. This conversation flew by, but I'm looking at the time and we've gone past 2 o'clock. So I think let's turn it over to any questions the audience may have. Malvika, I'll go to you.
Thank you so much, Jess. And thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Daniel, for this incredible conversation. So for our first question, we'll go to our very own Jess Chen. And Jess, you should be able to turn on your microphone at will.
Perfect. Thank you, Malvika, and thank you everyone for this great conversation today. It's been really a pleasure to tune in. My question is about curatorial decisions. If you could speak to how you make those curatorial decisions and how you generate them, what that process is generally like, that would be fantastic.
Okay, Jess, do you mean from a programming standpoint or visual art standpoint?
Whichever one seems more fun for you to answer.
Okay, well, that's actually fun because I kind of approach them both in a similar way. For me, the curatorial process is really rooted in the artist, in the creators, or in the individual people, regardless of what kind of where they're coming from, even if they're scholars. I'm interested in starting with the theme of the conversation, or even sometimes starting with just knowing these particular individuals and their practice or their thought process or who they are as human beings. I think about how they might connect or what they might be doing or how they think might connect to another individual. That's always where I start. And then I'll start looking at the work. I know that that may be backwards for most, people who have trained as curators, but I curate from my heart. I curate from the things that I know about who people are and how they think and how they might relate to each other and how they might empower and amplify and support or add to another person's story. And so that's where I start. And then if that is working and gelling, then we start to look at the work together. And then after that, after they bring all the stuff, and then I start editing. I start thinking about how to refine it and make it cohesive.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next question will come from a member of the audience, Catherine. And Catherine, you should be able to turn on your microphone now.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for your conversation. I hope to get to see your space at Portland, Maine. I hear so many great things about that area. Yeah, I was curious because Jess, it's in kind of tandem with what Jess was talking about, your curatorial choices of when you bring two people together, are there any controversies or any tensions, which I would think would, facilitate some openness, maybe enlightenment, growth, or maybe it's hidden,
We fortunately have had very few circumstances where there has been conflict. We have had, the few that we have had have been less about conflict and more where the relationship did not move and generate as deeply as either the one or the other of the individuals had hoped, or that we had hoped, and I think that what we're learning is that to give more consideration to how much time is really needed for residency with the goals that we have for relationship building. What is too short, what is, what's not long, those kinds of considerations. And then also, if it is simply not gelling, then what do we do? How do we it's because we can't make people open up. We can't make people overcome their own personal issues. The best we can do is open up a space and make it as warm and welcoming as possible and give them the support they need.
Thank you so much. I wonder, Daniel, if you have an answer to that as well.
Oh, yeah, I do. There is always going to be some tension between two individuals when they come together, if they don't already have a relationship. Also, even if they do have a relationship, coming together in a working space, there's another level of tension that is brought on. And part of and I feel like part of working as an artist is getting over that, because artists are generally kind of introverted, kind of, inside the shell. We really don't want to put it all out there like that, and so there's that tension to get around. I mean, a lot of us just do not like putting our ideas so forward. But when we see that this is a place that is designed for that, and that there's so little judgment, and that bringing yourself forward, even if it's painful, is beneficial.
I love that so much.
Great.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
I also really appreciate that, so much of the time that conflict is also part of the work, right? That discomfort is also part of the work, and how phenomenal that the two of you are building a container for that kind of cross-pollination. So thank you so much. Our next question will come from another Catherine, this time Catherine with a C. Catherine Olsen, take it away.
Thanks so much. And thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. I'd love to hear you talk more about the mentorship beyond the residency. So my question is, can you share how post-residency relationships are maintained, and then what happens afterwards, not only for the residents, but for yourselves and the team?
Whoosh, that is a really good question. And quite honestly, that's one that we are asking ourselves actively right now. We've also moved through a really intensive strategic planning process with our board and our advisory circle. And as a brand new organization, there has been not time to figure everything out. And so recognizing that when you create a space and with the intention that we have, that when people walk out that door after it's over, we can't, we don't want them to fall off a cliff. And we don't want the relationships that have been hopefully cultivated to just dry up. And so we're working through asking ourselves that very question, and also thinking about leveraging the experiences of our past alumni to help us figure out the answers to those questions. We have several successful relationships that two of which we shared in this conversation that are great kind of poster children for when it works well. And I think that we want to continue to draw on those experiences to really help us answer that question. One thing that I want to speak to is one thing that we have done kind of unintentionally as a result of COVID is we are in the midst of experiencing bringing two people together before the residency starts. So Sonia Clark, who is our current artist in residence and is here with us, was supposed to do a residency with us in 2020. So we have been in conversation with Sonia since like the fall of 2019, planning her residency for 2020. And she chose through some people that we put forward, who her mentee would be, who is an incredibly talented young woman, Aminata Conte, who also was an intern with us at the time. And so we put them in conversation. They made a connection from the beginning. We made a special connection with Sonia and continued to be in conversation with her through COVID, after COVID, and now she's here, and she literally walked in the door on Monday. Mm-hmm. And we all hugged like we have known each other for our entire lives. And I think that what we're learning is not to wait necessarily until the person gets here and think about after they leave, but think about how we continue this model of building the relationship, and then they get here, they already have a relationship, and they just deepen it, and they just go from here.
Thank you so much.
Amazing, thank you. Our next question will come from Lynn Crawford, who always has a beautiful background as she comes in from different parts of her home. So Lynn, excited to hear and see from you.
Hi, thank you so much for this incredible presentation. And my question kind of dovetails on what you just said. This line, you can't use the currency because you are the currency. Mm-hmm. I can imagine that's something that even if one knows it and has experienced it, there's many, many, many layers to deal with that line and levels. And I guess I'm asking, do you notice that having this safe space that you're creating, this sort of vital, vibrant, yet safe space, do you feel that the artists who come are better able to delve into a topic like that in a way maybe they couldn't before when they were, living their day job life?
Yes. It is a lot easier to get into conversations like that here, I found, because generally everyone around the table has an understanding of the language you're using, and and you're not having to justify your experiences and your life experience. You're not having to justify it in any way. It's simply a sharing and and everyone is trying to understand that how to navigate in this ocean that we're in this place that we're in. We are in it, and we are just trying to figure out how to navigate it, what things are true, and what things are true only for today, but tomorrow they are not going to be true. And they are true for you in this situation, but they are not true for you in another situation. That's the type of thing we are navigating all the time. And so those conversations are constant in this space.
And do the artists often feel like their work is different because they're able to have these conversations in this space that you're offering, creating? I
don't know if I can answer that for them.
Yeah, sure.
It's I mean, I can see things in a person's work, but I can't just say that the work is different. I can say that they may talk to me differently about it or whatever, but I can't say that the work is different because it's another artist's work too personal.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for that question. Our next question will come from Nick Bennett. Nick, go right ahead.
Well, thank you, Marcia, Daniel, and Jessamine for today. This has been a wonderful conversation. My question is kind of simple in that you've kind of talked about what's sort of on the horizon for Indigo Arts Alliance, but in the vein of sort of like radical imagination or radical dreaming, I'm kind of curious what is like kind of the biggest or wildest dream you would have of Indigo and how it would expand or grow maybe beyond to people in Maine or in your community, but sort of reciprocally how others can kind of maybe interact with it.
Well, thank you for asking that question. I will say my wildest dream, and I think we share this for sure, is that Indigo is here for another 100 years. That there are so many frankly, white-led organizations and institutions and residencies that have these long legacies. Why not, there be a Black-led and BIPOC-centered organization that has long-lasting legacy our dream from the beginning, before we built the space, was that we would create something that hopefully was a legacy building for our people. And we know we're not the first. We are in community with a cohort of national Black-led arts organizations and institutions who have been pioneers and are pioneering presently. And we are grateful to be standing on those shoulders and to be standing in community. And we want all of our Black-led organizations, institutions, and initiatives to thrive for perpetuity. And so one of the big goals is who and how can help us make that happen. We need all of you for sure, and we need all of your people to help us make sure that that happens. And so funding is a key priority. We are here because of the generosity of a lead donor who gave a significant amount of startup funds that we're working with. But we're also here by the individual gifts and donations and the grant writing that we do within our local community here in Maine. And we're waiting to get to that 3-year mark where we can qualify for some of the bigger grants and initiatives for funding. So that we can have that sustainability that we're really dreaming for. But in the interim, we and beyond, we really, that's it. That is it. It is how can we make sure that spaces like this continue to exist for us, because they're necessary alongside the others.
Yes, and also, to create a sort of a artistic, I don't want to say intellectual because it's not necessarily intellectual, but it's an ideological repository of artist ideas and works that span, that can go into the future, that because there's so much of the idea of artists is reliant upon their notoriety, and I feel like there's so many artists who may not, who are not well known, but wonderful ideas and wonderful things to offer that should be passed on. And that goes directly back to our idea of the mentorship, because there are so many artists of my generation who did not have the mentors available. The availability was just so sparse, and each of us had people who helped us along the way, but it was really sparse.
And the truth of the matter too is that, we have some incredibly talented and beautiful young people that have gone through our internship program and, are part of our community, have graduated from college and art schools, and don't know the basics of who they should know about as Black, Brown, Indigenous, and BIPOC artists. It is shocking. And we know that it's because those institutions of which they've graduated, they're not concerned with our story. They are not keeping the archive, in the way that they should. And they are not including in the pedagogy of what they are teaching and the communities that they're building effectively, so that these students come out with an art history that sees them and that they can name and speak to in the way they can speak to European artists. And so that's not just a generational thing for Daniel and I, that's happening right now.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to point out, as Malvika put in the chat, to smash that donation link for Indigo Arts Alliance. And long live Indigo Arts Alliance. So thank you.
Thank you.
What an incredible answer. In just a moment, we'll turn for a final question and comment to our publisher and the captain of this fine vessel, the Brooklyn Rails, Phong Bui. But I do want to take a moment to say, this has been a really remarkable conversation. And I'm really glad that you came. We're so glad that you came onto the new social environment to sort of open the doors of the Indigo Arts Alliance, because we have been observing over the past year with arts organizations, with museums, that we're at the heart of this kind of question of what does public investment, what does decolonization, what does recalibrating those spaces with an eye to the community look like. And it's so phenomenal, the work that you're doing. So thank you so much. And without further ado, passing it to Fong H. Bowie.
Thank you, Malvika. Thank you, Jessamine. Hello, Daniel.
Hey, Bob.
Hello, brother, sister Marcia. How are you?
Oh.
Hello.
I know it's been ages, even though only
Yeah.
It's a lifetime ago.
I know, and I can't wait. In fact, I might be coming back in August, so I will definitely stop by.
Yes, please.
Yeah, definitely. So listen, you guys, that was a very heartfelt, nutritious conversation, and you're absolutely right. It's rare to do what you guys doing because it's kind of fostering the community grassroots level, meaning you look at history and growth in a long term, which is very important. It's not something that you can just do overnight. You certainly have the calling. I always felt calling is the most important thing in life, Like I always love that African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yes.
And without the community, we are nothing.
Right.
We can be super stubborn, maybe some of us are product of our upbringing. Without the community who lend the wisdom and the dialogue to justify and negotiate what we can do that benefit our growth, is so important. My friend Lynn Crawford here, when I went to Detroit, she had this term, because we were talking about mentorship and cross-pollination. She had this word that I never heard of, but since then I knew, quiddity. We need to get to our personal quiddity. Am I right, Lynn?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that when you have a mentor,
Yeah.
it's not easy to have just a friend. And I think our culture have eliminated that so long ago. And one of the most important things that I know that we share in profound similarity is to respect the elderly, to get to their wisdom so that they can pass on the wisdom, and then you can offer that to you. Exactly your relationship to David Driscoll, who I was really upset that I didn't manage to have a chance to interview him in greater depth, because by the time I spoke to him, he's already felt ill. But we talked great length on the phone. We met several times, obviously. I admire him a great deal. But here you are, David's soul and legacies have imparted to you guys at Indigo. So Jessamine will be one of the people that will help to facilitate the transference from student in the neighborhood. I know that Kobe is very committed, super committed to bringing that, that entire community in Waterville to a greater artistic, I would say, engagement. So we'll hold Jessamine accountable on this. Well, I can't wait to see you. Thank you so much. And I will let you guys know when I'm coming, at least a week or 10 days in advance. Okay. Keep up the good work. All right. And let us know what else you need from us and whatnot. I'm support artists run organizations. So when I come, we'll talk more.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Fong. Can I do a quick plug for Sonia's talk that's coming up?
Sure.
Yes, so July 21st, right, Sonia, is when Sonia Clark will be giving a talk about her practice and her all of the incredible things she's doing. And I believe she's also going to be in conversation with her mentee, Aminata Conte, who just yes, who just was awarded the Wingate Prize.
Marcia, maybe we can do an art in transit. okay?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yes, yes. Oh yeah, we'll Brooklyn and Portland, Maine is very near you guys.
Oh yeah, and
Yes.
we live in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn's our second home. So we
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, Fong, I'm gonna teach you how to say my name, Marcia.
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 That sounds better than Marcia. Come on. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So yes, let's continue talking and keep up good work. And yeah, and back to you, Malvika.
Thank you so much, Fong. Marcia, ma'am, I love that generosity of teaching a person to say your name correctly. I need to learn how to do that myself. So at the Rail, we have a tradition. We always end with poetry, and today I'm thrilled to welcome our poet laureate of the day, Brandon Wint, to the Zoom stage. Ontario-born poet and spoken word artist, Brandon Wint uses poetry to attend to the joys, devastations, and inequities associated with this era of human and ecological history. Increasingly, his page and performance works cast a tender but robust, love that, tender but robust attention towards colonial logics, capitalist logics, and their undoing. He's been widely anthologized, and most recently, Divine Animal, his debut collection, which came out with Right Bloody North last year, maps the Atlantic Ocean as both a historical site and a diasporic metaphor from which to explore the complex journeys and negotiations that brought his family to Canada. I'll drop a link in the chat to this phenomenal debut, and Brandon, take it away. And I'll invite you to, perfect.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here. Yeah, such a pleasure to learn about all the good work that's being done through the Art Alliance. And as someone who's based in Canada, I just feel, yeah, overjoyed to now know of the expansive work that you all are doing and your intentions. And so, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to bear witness and to listen to this conversation for what is still morning for me. One of the beautiful things and difficult things is that it's been like the conversation has been so expansive that it's been hard to choose a poem to best accompany all of the insights of the conversation today. But Daniel, you were mentioning in the context of your work, and even in the context of the work of your space, this idea of unburdening, or this idea of feeling free and safe and warm and sort of unbound in artistic space. And so it reminded me of this poem that I wrote some years ago called Body, Anthem, and Prayer, which I will read for you now. And it's just about sort of my own wishes to unburden myself, to be free and be embodied as an artist and as a human being. So it goes, oh body, rustle the air, bless dandelions with your long shadow, toss your reflected gaze into jars of honey, offer your fingertips like figs to the mouths of lovers, gather in your hair the ticker tape of cherry blossoms, give your scent to water, to a river, a tincture of your held breath. In every gesture, swim, make the chest a splintered seed, be a moonlight, a devotion, tireless as winter. Be, if you must, a singular anthem, soften the brutally human, sing with the corvids instead. Body, I unleash you from mere puppetry of flesh, unspool you, unscorn you, unmake your map of bruise, blood and dance you, nectar you wholly, unghost you, conjure and mystique you, unmyth you, elastic your bones, luster you, incant your latent shades, mango scent you, lilac your hair, tender skin you, essential you in oil, anthem and voice you, intone you, spark you divine with song. I untether you, body, from museum of race, unchain you from treadmill of capital, release you now into fields of marigolds, the archways of sunflowers bending. body, body, tired animal. I fill your mouth with water, blue silky, in spirals of wind. And I reserve an anthem for joy, though it has no words. When I sing through my closed mouth, the song wells in my eyes, and the winged insects who sleep at midnight under porch light stretch themselves to hear. In the shadows of skyscrapers and the loom of blue glass towers, I stir the listless downtown avenues with an aria of footsteps, the instrument of my breath rattling trees. I reserve an anthem, private as bedrooms, where unseeable verses tumble from my body's every gesture, and a single finger raised into the heat of my wife's waist becomes jazz. Even as I sleep and mosquitoes trouble the stillness of my face, I sing a hymn for the unseen world that holds this human dance together. My entire frame, a grateful mouth, gushing quivered notes. I wake daily into this anthem, the chorus of my life. Thank you all for having me.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
Brandon,
And
incredible.
I would love to come see y'all in Maine.
You know,
Okay.
that was a blessing. That
Thank you
was
so
a
much.
blessing. Thank you. And I just want to say, Ashe. Ashe.
I hope we stay in touch. Thank you for hearing. Thank you for receiving.
Thank you.
Brandon, we love you so much. Thank you so much for that reading. Marcia and Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today, taking us through everything you do and everything you aspire to do. Thank you to Jessamine, and thank you to all of you in the audience and in the chat. This was a really blessed day. As always, we'll share the recording of today's program on our archives, as well as on YouTube, so it will be available in a day or two if ever you'd like to revisit this conversation. And please join us again tomorrow for a conversation between artist David Rowe and poet and art critic Carter Ratcliffe. We'll close out with a poetry reading by Evan Kennedy, and that will be, as always, at 1 p.m. right here in the Zoom. I'm dropping a couple links to Brandon's debut collection, Divine Animal, the Indigo Arts Alliance's donation link, and Indigo artist Sonia Clark's reading, speaking engagement, later this month in a couple days. Please check those out. But other than that, thank you all so much. I'll invite you to your microphones if you'd like to say hello to one another, goodbye on your way out, or anything else you feel compelled. But this was beautiful. Thank you for sharing this space with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to the Rail, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Jessamine.
Thank you, Brandon, for the beautiful reading.
Yes, thank you, Brandon. That was beautiful. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'll be in touch.
Yeah.
It was so
Brandon,
great. Thank you
I'll
so
connect
much.
all of you.